Once again, we're going to look at participles, but we're coming back to commas now. We're going to see how important a comma is yet again and how it can really change the meaning of the sentence. So first thing I want to mention is that if the participle phrase, if the participle clause is at the beginning of the sentence, things are pretty easy. Because, well, not very easy, but we need a comma. Yeah, that's the main thing. We've got subclause, subordinate clause I mean, or dependent clause, then the main clause, and so we need a comma. If you're not sure what a subordinate clause is, well, it's a non-complete thought. If you're not sure what a main clause is, it's a complete thought. It can be a sentence on its own. You can say he glanced out of the window, and you can say he ran straight home. If you want more information, I have videos on subordinate clauses and main clauses. Just use the YouTube search bar and you'll find them. So things are pretty easy with the participle phrase at the start, but please remember that this word must be the subject of the participle clause. Who's removing their glasses? He is. Who's covered in bandages? He is. Okay, so it must be the subject, otherwise you've got a dangling modifier. However, be aware that some words look like participles, but they're not participles. They may be adverbial phrases or gerunds. I spoke about this in the previous lesson. On participles. So please check that lesson as well if you're not sure what I'm talking about. It's something which I've only come across recently. Secondly, participle phrases at the end. Okay, at the end of the sentence is a little bit more complex because sometimes there's no comma, but sometimes you use a comma. So let's look at no comma first. Why do we use no comma? Well, look at a sentence like this. I heard him calling my name, or I heard his calling my name. May be possible, although very, very strange or very unnatural to most native speakers to use that possessive pronoun there. But I heard him calling my name. Who is calling my name? He is. And so we don't need a comma here. If the object which the participle is modifying comes just before the participle, we do not need a comma. This is a vital modifier, really. I heard him calling my name. So don't use a comma in these situations where you're describing, where this participle refers to the word just before it. I could say the same here, although it's slightly different. I bought it from the man dressed in black. So who was dressed in black? The man was dressed in black. And you might notice that this is a reduced relative clause, the man who was dressed in black. These reduced relative clauses, when the participle phrase is at the end, we do not need a comma. This is a vital modifier. It's telling us which man. If this participle phrase tells us which one concerning the subject, then you really don't need a comma. Please don't use a comma. I'm going to show you in a moment what happens if we do add a comma, because we could, but it changes the meaning. So use a comma if the participle modifies a noun further back in the sentence. God, I'm forgetting to use articles today. I don't know why. So use a comma if the participle, lots of articles missing here, modifies a noun further back in the sentence. Compare these sentences. I found him shouting his name, and I found him, comma, shouting his name. They mean different things. If I say I found him shouting his name, it means when you found him, he was shouting his own name. Let's say he's Peter. When you found him, he was shouting, Peter, Peter, Peter. Who knows why? Maybe he's gone mad. But that's what the first one means. I found him shouting his name, shouting without the comma. Just like here it modified the man, shouting modifies him. And so that would be an odd thing to say. Normally we would need a comma, because normally shouting his name, what we mean is I found him when I was shouting his name. So here when you use a comma, it actually means the participle is modifying the subject of the main clause. I found him shouting his name. So if the participle modifies the subject of the main clause, please use a comma. and then that's fine. I found him, comma, shouting his name. We could of course change it round and it would still have a comma. Shouting his name, comma, I found him. Okay, so you can see what difference a comma makes. It makes a massive amount of difference in a sentence like this. It completely changes the meaning. That's how important punctuation is. And the same with the next one. I went over to the guy covered in bandages. That means that the guy covered in bandages, the guy who was covered in bandages is this guy. He is the guy covered in bandages. However, if we add the comma, I went over to the guy and I was covered in bandages. I went over to him while I was covered in bandages. And so as soon as we add the comma, the covered modifies the original pronoun in the main clause. So if we add a comma here, the dressed suddenly doesn't modify man, it modifies I. I bought it from the man while I was dressed in black. Okay? That's what the comma does with a participle phrase. So if you have any questions, as always, about this particular grammar, please don't ask me to correct sentences or homework. I'm not a homework checker, but I'll happily discuss different grammatical nuances, because they're really tough and there's a lot of different ways we can look at these kind of sentences. So please, they're very confusing. Write any questions under the video and I'll be delighted to discuss them. Thanks for watching. Please, if you've liked this video, give it a like, and I hope to see you all soon.